factor negative y squared plus 10y minus 24. We look at this quadratic and notice that the leading coefficient is a negative 1. If this leading coefficient had been a 1, we could factor this quite easily by looking at the factors of the constant term and seeing if we could come up with two factors of that summed up to the coefficient on my y term. But it's not a 1, it's a negative 1. Well, we can fix that. We can make it a 1. How? We'll factor out a negative sign. Take a negative sign out of minus y squared, we're left with a positive y squared. Take a negative sign out of 10y, we're left with a negative 10y. Take a negative sign out of negative 24, we're left with a positive 24. Right? So we factor out a negative, and now we have this form that we know how to factor easily. We have a coefficient of 1 on our leading order term. So we look at our constant term, 24, and we try and come up with factors of that sum to a negative 10. Well, I have a positive constant. I want the factors to sum to a negative number. So I'm really only interested in factors of 24 that are negative, so that their sum is negative as well. So let's look at some negative numbers that multiply together and give me 24. Minus 1 and 24, negative 24 work. Minus 2 and negative 12 work. Minus 3 and negative 8 work. None of these, however, have a sum of negative 10 until we get to this one, minus 4 and minus 6. Right? The product of those two guys is positive 24. The sum is negative 10y. So I know that my factorization of this part, still got the minus sign of the previous part of the factorization. The factorization of this part is equal to the product of two binomials that have the form y minus 4 in one of them, and y minus 6 in the other one. So that is our answer. As always, if you're nervous about some of the math that you did, we could go ahead and check whether or not this is in fact the same thing we had up there, which it should be, unless we messed up on our math. But how would we check? Well, we just do the multiplication. Right? So I could FOIL out these terms. I still have a negative sign out front. FOIL these terms. I get a y times y. I get a y squared. Minus 4 times y, negative 4y. Y times minus 6, negative 6y. Minus 4 times minus 6, positive 24. Combine some like terms. These guys combine to a negative 10y, right? So let's go ahead and multiply this negative sign in. Negative times y squared is minus y squared. Negative times negative 10y is positive 10y. Negative times positive 24 is negative 24. And this polynomial is what we started with. So this factorization had to be correct.